Becky Rhinehart, after almost 40 years, you're really going to do it. You're really going to retire?
I'm going to go to Disney World.
Can you believe they're making us do this?
No.
Both of us have a face for radio.
That's why I got into radio. Thank you very much.
So tell us a little bit about how you got into radio. You started very young.
You really want that story?
Sure.
Well, there was always radio in my house. Mom and Dad listened to VA all the time when I was little. Then when I was 9, my dad got laid off a lot. You know, back then it happened. And back then, our TV set blew up. And back then, you took it to the repair shop and had it repaired.
And tell everybody, back then was in Noble County.
Yes.
That's where you lived.
That's where I lived.
Yeah.
Yes. So it took several weeks for the TV to be repaired, so we had radio. That's what we did. And 9-year-old Becky was listening to a lot of different kinds of music, and there was a song by the Shangri-Las.
Wow.
Oh, leader of the pack. That was a huge, but it spoke to me.
Sure.
And so I thought, oh, wow, I won't sing it because that would be wrong. But so I would listen to the radio a lot more. And at that time, at night, I would turn on my radio and I would listen to Chicago because you could get WCFL and WLS.
Sure.
And I loved those guys. I thought they were just hysterical. And I think, well, how did they do this? And how did they do that? And special effects and all those things. And I was very shy. And I thought, wow, how would that be to actually pick up a microphone and talk, and people would think what you said meant something. Didn't realize that's what I would do because I was very shy.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't really have a lot of friends, so I spent a lot of time listening to my radio. And at one point, here, they used to do something called the Young and Carefree Show in the afternoons on Saturdays. And I got up some nerve, and I called one of my friends, and we came up. Dave Wilson at that time was doing it part-time.
Now you were probably high school age
I
at
was
this
high
time.
school.
Mm-hmm.
And so she and I read requests on the air, scared to death, but did it anyway. And then later, Mike McKay followed Dave. Once Dave was finished, Mike used to do it, and so I came up with him. For him and did things then. Then I met somebody who worked here at night, and he said, well, you need to come up and see, because I asked him all these questions. And so I did, and he said, well, you need to check into the radio TV program at OUZ. That way you could get all your questions answered. So I did. Anyway, here I am all these years later, and I'm doing radio.
Now, you originally worked for Cloverleaf Broadcasting
Mm-hmm.
and General Manager Bill Coffey.
Mm-hmm.
And then, surprisingly, the one and only time that you've never worked here on College Hill,
Mm-hmm.
you went to WHIZ, but not in radio, actually in television.
I was an off-camera announcer
So
for
what
several years.
What did you do as an off-camera announcer?
I was one of those people who would say, don't miss this show coming up Sunday night at 7, that kind of thing. And I'd put it on a big reel, and they'd run it all day after TV shows and things. That's what I did, and commercials.
And then about 1983, you came back to Cambridge.
I did.
And you were doing the evenings.
I did.
I believe playing instrumentals. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily high energy for late night radio.
No.
And not long after you came back is when AVC Communications and Grant Halfley purchased the original WILE radio stations, AM and FM. Do you remember the night that Grant took over the radio stations?
I do. We came up and changed formats drastically, and we used to have a sign-off, nighty night.
Wait, can you sing that again?
No.
Nighty night until tomorrow. Nighty night, oh what sweet sorrow.
I play it. I don't sing it. but he changed it to James Taylor, Don't Let Me Be Lonely Tonight. And that's history right there, too.
So since then, a lot of things have changed over the time that you've spent behind the microphone. Back in the day, you used to play records.
And we edited with razor blades and grease pencils, and we had reel-to-reels.
You actually cut the tape.
We did.
You literally cut it.
Literally.
And a lot of the commercials and things were all done live.
They were. You had a big book, and you read in between songs.
So what kind of music did you play back in those days? Because you originally didn't start with country music.
Well, this was an MOR station when Mr. Coffee had it, so middle of the road. So there was a little bit of everything. And then when Grant took it, it was more top 40. So
over the years in radio, a lot of things happen. Some are sad, some are funny. We'll talk about some of the funny ones. What's the funniest thing you remember happening to you on the radio?
Funny.
Something funny. We play a lot of jokes on each other.
Well, yes, there were a lot of jokes. That's true.
Did anybody ever play a joke on you?
On me? Why, do you know something
Maybe,
that I don't know?
maybe not.
Uh-oh.
I vaguely remember a story about obituaries.
Oh, but that wasn't me.
That wasn't you?
No. I can't remember. Someone was in the little studio reading obituaries, and bless her name, this poor sweet lady, her name was I'm a Rocket. Her real name was I'm a Rocket. So they literally drew a picture of a rocket, and the poor guy who was in there reading, they started to put the rocket up the window, and poor guy, he had to turn off his mic and get himself together before he finished because it was kind of funny.
Oh.
I remember one time when I worked here at night.
It's okay. We won't.
You won't tell.
We won't tell anybody.
No.
We won't tell anybody.
And it must have been around Halloween, but there were a couple of people up here at the time, and somebody said, "There's somebody running through the yard. There's somebody running through the yard. Go look out the window." And I opened up the window, and somebody jumped out with a big werewolf mask. Scared me to death. Then also we used to have a big owl who used to sit on top of the antenna, and then if you walked out at certain times, he'd like flap and hoo-hoo at you and scare you to death. Just little things like that.
All those little fun things.
All those little fun things.
You've been here so long that it's basically become a part of your life, to the point where you met Andrew, your current husband, here at the radio station.
I did.
Tell us about that.
I was in that studio. I was working at night. Grant had a couple of men in here remodeling, and I was doing things, and I looked across the window, and there was this ladder, and I saw these gray and maroon Nike tennis shoes, and that's all I could see. And I was doing things, and I happened to look over, and he started walking down the ladder, and I'm like, oh, look at that. And he had this big smile and blue sparkly eyes, and it was like, oh. And yes, I married that man. Who would have thunk it?
Who would have thought?
Who would have thought that?
Yeah. So radio obviously has been a major part of your life, and radio here in the Cambridge, Guernsey County, Noble County area. Think back now, that little girl at age 9, do you have any concept of just the role that you've played over the years with the community? I mean, think about it. There are people here that have never heard another person on WWKC in the morning other than you.
I was here when it was born. 30 years, July 1st, 1989, and I have been with it ever since.
And some of the legends in radio, I mean, people I know you remember, Casey Kasem, Wolfman Jack, Howard Stern still going, even Ryan Seacrest, who started very young. You started younger than he did, I think. None of them have been on the air longer than you. No, it's true. It's hard to believe, isn't it? That's what I mean.
I must
you're
have been
very unique.
4 when I started. I have to say.
I was going to guess 2 or 3, but
Wow.
Have you had time to think about the impression you've made on people over the years? Think of all of the community events you've promoted and the dedications you've played on Valentine's Day and all the unique things that you've had the opportunity. Have you had a chance to think about that ever? The influence you've had on the community?
I've always hoped that I would make somebody happy, maybe make them smile for a minute or do something to help their day go a little better. I guess I've really not thought about it that much. I've had listeners come up and say they really like what I do, and I always appreciate them. I find them to be very special, and I appreciate that they have stuck with me all these years.
What are you going to miss most?
I'm not dying here.
Well, I know you're not going to miss getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning.
No, I won't miss getting up at 3:50 a.m. I won't miss hitting the deer every year.
You've done it for 4 decades.
Right.
You're going to miss something. What are you going to miss the most?
Well, certainly I'll miss the people here. We're kind of a really strange, dysfunctional family, but we're still a family. I know Adam's going, yeah, we are. I may not participate directly in radio, but radio will always be a part of who I am. Will I miss my listeners? I will. But as again, I'm not dying. I'm sure I'll see people when I'm out. So definitely if they want to stop and say hi to me, I would love that. I would love that. And I hope they remember me fondly, because I will remember them fondly too. You're going to make me cry. Stop that.
I'm not going to make you cry, I promise.
Okay.
But nobody loves radio more than you, especially the way radio used to be done. And I think everybody would agree that comes through every time you turn on a microphone. And I can say we're going to miss you here, and I know your listeners are going to miss you out there.
I will miss them as well.
This wasn't that hard now, was it?
Again, I'm not the person to do this. I'm more the interviewer, not the interviewee. But
You did great. And despite the fact we hate to see you leave, I'm glad we got to sit down and share some of your stories and get to spend a little extra time for you before you take off.
Well, it's been great. My time is up. Till we meet again, take care, stay well, and have a great rest of your day.